Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Welcome everyone to the group chat brought to you by Overmark. I'm your host Darrell, and finally, after a long break post its finals, Emmanuel is back with us. Emmanuel, you want to say hi to our listener?
Hello. It's been a while, man. Happy to be back. Nice to see you again, Darrell. This is really some solid stuff. Today we're going to be discussing a very interesting little topic here, which I think that some of you guys might struggle with on the daily nowadays, especially since we're technically in Circuit Breaker 2.0. So Darrell, how about you share a bit more about certain tips that you yourself adopt to become more productive during this mini little Circuit Breaker where we are not allowed to go out and have fun, and how do you remain sane in the four walls that surround you, and how do you continue to be productive despite all this crazy nonsense happening out there?
So just setting a bit of context, today what we want to do is to do a deep dive in terms of how we can be more productive during a home-based learning. So home-based learning, technically it kind of ends by this week or next week because June holidays are coming, right? But then I know some Sec 4s, you might still have some lessons during June holidays, and we won't have any idea how long this pandemic would last. So in a way, you can expect quite a bit of home-based learning in the near future, or maybe even after secondary school, or maybe next year. We don't really know. So overall, we can expect this kind of telecommunication over Zoom, to really last. So we just want to drop some real insightful tips on how this can how you can make the best out of your home-based learning. And let's say if this unfortunately persists, the very fact that right now we are closing in on June, we're not that far away from your O-levels and A-levels. It's just in a couple of months. And if this situation persists and you have to do home-based learning, how do you make the most out of it? Okay, I want to talk first about the common barriers. So what are some things that will stop you from being productive during home-based learning? Okay, the first, is that you are constantly distracted by your internet access or by your phone. So as compared to being in a class setting whereby your teacher will scream at you if you use your phone, right? At home, nobody is really there to guide you and to make sure that you don't do it. So I think that's a very common reason why students tend to fall off track. Instead of listening to the tutor or the teacher, you just do an alternate tab, and then you go on your websites to read whatever nonsense you want to read, or you start playing games on your phone, and that can be really counterproductive. And another thing that I think stop a lot of students from being productive is the very fact that your bed, or if you're in your bedroom, your bed is just there. When you wake up in the morning and your teacher is starting to teach a lesson in a very monotonous tone, there's no way, right, you can control the urge, to go and lie on your bed. But the moment you do that, you're not being productive. So for me, I struggle with that too. So working or studying in the bedroom, it is a big barrier for me. And the last one that I think a lot of times why students zone off during lessons is that, teaching essentially, there's this very personal touch. You kind of need to feel connected with what the teacher is teaching for you to be engaged, right? But online, you really just don't get the interaction or that human body language that keeps you engaged. So most of the time, maybe you cannot understand, or poor audio quality. You just get very turned off by the whole experience, and then you just decide to disengage yourself. So that's another way you can potentially find yourself in a very unproductive state during home-based learning. Okay, Emmanuel, for that, do you have any extra things to add in terms of why students might be distracted during home-based learning?
Wow, there are many different reasons. So sometimes I feel that people, when they wake up, they don't really have a goal. So that is, I feel one of the biggest reasons to why people just generally float about in the land of unproductivity. So usually, all of this stems not mainly from a lack of discipline, but mainly from a lack of purpose. So I feel if you're a student right now, the worst thing that you can be doing, is actually to not have any goals, to not have any kind of overarching thing that you're trying to pursue in your life. Because when this happens and you're just living with the demands that life is putting you through, then you don't really have a purpose. You're not seeking out anything. Then it becomes very easy to get sidetracked. So I feel that if you are able to manage this one little section of that, developing a purpose, having some motivation to accomplish the things in your life that are important, maybe your studies, treating your family nicer, stuff like that, then you'd have a lot of a better time. You have a lot more clarity in what you're doing for this Circuit Breaker 2.0. So remember guys, sometimes it's not just the lack of discipline, it's also the lack of purpose. So if you are facing struggles like finding your purpose, finding what you need to do every single day, I think a good activity is to plan out your days. So I'm quite sure Darrell and myself, we both plan out our days. We are quite packed with a lot of activities, and it really helps us stay on track and focused with what the tasks at hand need to be accomplished. So I feel like you need to do that. And it's good if you start developing a habit like this much earlier on. So most of you guys are like in your Sec 3, Sec 4, J1, J2 phase. So if you're listening to this and you are able to develop this habit way early on, like I plan my schedule every Monday. So actually I just planned it like today. So if you're doing that, right, it will really, really set you up for success. So I really hope that whoever's listening to this, during this period, especially in these trying times of uncertainty, like find your mojo, find your clarity. Go and start like investing time in figuring out what you want to accomplish for today, for tomorrow, for this week, for the month. And then eventually you'll see that you no longer have a lack of clarity. You no longer have a lack of purpose. You can find what you need to do. So that is one of the biggest reasons why I feel like some of my own students sometimes get distracted. They don't have an overarching purpose. They don't know what they're supposed to be doing. So when you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, right, then it becomes very obvious that, oh, you get easily distracted. You don't have an overarching theme that you need to return back to. So yeah, that's my side of the story. What do you think, Darrell?
Okay, down to like, I think adding on to the tips on how you can stay productive, other than having a purpose and setting goals, right? I think it's important for your goals to be very specific and you have a sort of a time frame to it. For example, today I want to accomplish 1, 2, 3, which might include revising 3 chapters from physics, doing 1 paper, and maybe completing homework for Chinese or something like that. So you kind of need to list out exactly what you want to do. And more importantly, it's just not a laundry list of what you want to do. It's about allocating a certain time slot for it to be done. So for example, from 2 to 3:30 p.m., I'm not going to touch anything else. I'm just going to focus on this. Right. So this task, I need to get it done and I have to clock it in by this hour. So by having that sort of like timetable, your own timetable, it really helps to make your purpose and your goals a lot more specific. So it's super important to do that. Okay, let's say if you're attending a lesson and you feel like you're getting disengaged, right? So you kind of need to keep yourself engaged. And what are some ways you can do that? Firstly, you can take notes, right? So if your teacher is teaching, don't just blindly listen because whatever you're listening, right, you probably only retain 10 to 20% of it. That's how weak our brains are. You can't remember that much, right? But if you take down notes, okay, you have something to refer back to. That's what I call knowledge retention. You're actually able to keep 60 to 70% of what you actually learned, and you'll be able to absorb that huge portion of it if you revise it again. So a lot of times it's not about listening to it for the first time because you won't get anything. It's the second and third time that really reinforces what you can retain. So take notes, that will help a lot. If you feel like it, go and ask questions if needed. At least that will keep you engaged and that will keep your teacher slightly entertained because most of the time nobody's going to speak, right? And then all your mics and cameras mysteriously spoil during home-based learning, right? That's a very common thing. But just try to keep yourself engaged by asking questions if needed, because if you don't ask, you're never going to get an answer, right? And then you will always have a question mark on the question that you never knew how to solve. And lastly, use your friends to keep yourself in check. So for example, if you know you are like I cannot be disciplined, I will just trail off. Even if you lock your phone, you will still find some other ways of distracting yourself. Make sure you have a group chat whereby all your friends keep each other in check. Okay, make sure that, okay, from 2 to 3 o'clock, we're going to do this. Okay, everybody don't get distracted. And then you can even solve a question together or do your homework together. So just build that community, that support structure that will help you be more productive during home-based learning. Okay, now moving on to more tips in terms of how you can be productive. To be productive, you need to stay disciplined, right? So what are some ways you can stay disciplined? So on top of setting clear milestones to accomplish for the day, right, and having a clear timetable, something that I think is very important is to reward yourself, right? There's no way you're going to go through an entire day of like mugging without like any clear reward inside. So, when you set a timetable, the good part about it is that you know when you have to hustle, okay, study hard, but then you play hard as well. So when it comes time for you to relax, okay, time for you to watch your YouTube, your TikTok, okay, your Netflix, go for it. Time for you to game, go for it. Go out 100% for it. But then when it's time for you to study, focus, and don't think about your games. right? So you need to set clear reward milestones for yourself, and that makes it a lot easier for you to punch through the day. I don't go through my entire day just working 12, 14 hours. That's not going to work, right? So I have a clear dedicated time slot for me to rest and recharge so that I'm able to push forward the next day while keeping myself with those small rewards. So I think that's really important and something that we tend to overestimate, and it leads to burnout when you don't give yourself that sort of care and the sort of like chance for recovery lah. Okay, so Emmanuel, maybe just adding on a point or two in terms of how students can stay disciplined during such periods of home-based learning.
I think that one thing you mentioned was turning on the camera for your Zoom classes. Okay, now I know it might seem like it's very counterintuitive and you're very paiseh about it, but it actually is quite a useful thing. So if your teacher asks you to keep your cameras on during class, don't turn it off halfway. Stay accountable. Like when you are having your camera on, right? You know yourself, you'll be probably sitting upright. You'll probably be focusing on your work and you're more glued to the screen and what your teacher is saying. So I mean I think it's a very easy little thing to do to just hold yourself accountable. And while it might not seem like a very comfortable thing to do to let everyone see what you're doing and your background, I feel like it's important so that you don't get distracted. And I mean, with technology, you have a virtual background right nowadays. So if you're very paiseh about whatever you might have around you or your surroundings, then just use the virtual background so people can only see your face. And then just listen in and make sure you're paying attention. The other thing that I will also want to mention is fixing your sleep cycle. So I know it's HBL now and most people don't have to physically get up for school. Try not to put yourself in a very compromising situation where you're sleeping at 3 a.m. every night. If you're sleeping at 3 a.m. and you have a class at 9 a.m. that is HBL, you're not going to be paying attention. Guaranteed, I wouldn't pay attention if I slept at 3 and woke up at 9. So don't put yourself in those compromising situations. Tell yourself that you want to sleep by a certain time and abide by what you said. Okay, so if you have obviously a morning class, then do your best to make sure you get in bed early. This is a very, very important habit that will follow you through the rest of your life. It doesn't change when you graduate, when you become a working adult, when you move on to JC, if you're in secondary school now. It doesn't change. All of this is basic discipline that you must build up yourself. If you're unable to accomplish this, then you end up losing a lot of mental energy throughout the day. You become very groggy and then you become, it's very counterproductive. You become very sluggish. So your brain just doesn't work the same way that it should. And you're not utilizing your full potential. You're not making use of the brains that God has given to you. So make sure that you're getting enough rest. Okay, it seems like a very small point, but if you can accomplish this, wow, you'll be so much more productive. This is one of those hurdles which I feel is very little, there's very little attention put on it, but has a very, very big return. So try your best to get into bed without using your phone, early on, because if you use your phone, right, then there's that blue light thing that keeps you awake. So avoid that, maybe 15, 20 minutes before you go to bed. The other thing is also just setting the environment for yourself. So I feel that one major problem that comes in with HBL is not having a physical change of environment between your work area and your rest area. So if you're able to, if your house can accommodate that, make sure that you actually do have a change in environment. So for example, if you're resting, right, maybe put your rest area as obviously your bedroom, right? And then your work area as your study room or your kitchen or your living room, something like that. So that you have a physical change in environment and your body knows when subconsciously that it needs to pay attention and when it can slack. For myself, I actually do my work in my room. So I know it's a bit counterintuitive, but listen, I'm actually still able to distinguish between work and rest by turning on all the lights when I'm working, and then when I'm resting, just switching on the background light kind of thing, and then it dims my entire environment. So my body kind of reacts to that, and it really, really helps. When you're in work mode, right? For right now, I'm in work mode now. My entire room is well lit. And so I know that I need to be paying attention. I need to put in the mental energy to engage with what I'm doing. And then it helps break your environment in terms of segregating it to work and play. It makes a big difference. So I highly suggest you also do that. Yeah. Any additional tips to add, Darrell?
Nah, I think you shared enough. But I really agree on the sleep cycle thing. If you don't get proper rest, right, it's very difficult. So it's also about your body's biological clock. So if you are used to sleeping late at night, right, and then by the time you wake up in the morning, you're groggy and you're going to be unproductive the whole day, right, you really need to make the effort to adjust back your body clock to a healthy range. That's adding on to the fact that you want to keep your body in the best shape, because as you build up towards your national exam, falling sick is literally the worst thing that could happen to you. So it's not only about sleeping, like, it's about the way you eat, and whether even in this situation, whether you can get sufficient exercise. So you just keep your body in the best shape, because that's what gonna keep your brain in the best shape, and then that's how you're gonna have a more productive day. Okay, moving on to my favorite part of the podcast, as always, the dilemma of the week. So the dilemma for this week is that if your home-based learning lesson is not productive, should you continue to listen in or to do your own revision? Okay, so I'll pass this difficult question to Emmanuel first so that he can take the blunt of it.
This is a hard one. Okay, it really depends. So I have to put some context into how I made my decision. Back in JC, right, there used to be like some lectures which are not optional, which are compulsory, but nonetheless, people always skipped. And for myself, I actually attended most of the lectures. Of course, I did skip some lah. So I will share a bit on that little section of which lectures I skipped and why I made that choice. I'm a very no bullshit person, so you can really trust my words when I say it. I felt that some lectures were not value adding to my learning. So some of which include just teachers who would only recap content that you are very confident in already. So if you kind of know that like certain topics, right, will really not help you, then it might be better in like investing your time to doing additional practice for stuff that you really need help with. But that being said, right, you have to remember that you have to, like, in order for you to make a proper decision, you must really be very true to yourself. Like if you suck at this and if you're stuck at the topic and you're skipping it because you don't like the discomfort of being wrong, or you don't like how unmotivating it can become when like you're lost in the lecture, then there's a different ball game altogether. Like if that is the reason why you're skipping class, then you're doing it wrongly. You should only skip the class, right, if you are extremely competent in that one topic, in that one subject, in that one little lesson, where whatever the teacher is saying, you already know, right? But how many of that is you? Like ideally, right? I mean, or realistically, right? You know that majority of the stuff you are learning right now at this juncture, before your O levels or your A levels, you probably are not 100% confident of. So I do not advocate skipping those classes at this period of time when content is still being taught from school. For example, if you are skipping lectures now and the lectures involve electromagnetism in school, then what are you doing? This is extremely important and it's very, very difficult for you to visualize. So be real to yourself. If you are moving on towards the end and then they're just wasting your time with content that you're very confident with, then okay, skip. Go and do something more productive. Go and do TYS papers. Go and do revision worksheets. That makes sense. But if you're skipping content lectures, right, that are new and there are things that you haven't been taught, then you should really, really rethink your actions. You're going to be losing out, right, on in terms of the learning curve. You're going to be losing out to all your friends. So I highly suggest you evaluate your current position before you make a reckless decision like that. Okay, that being said, I do not condone skipping lectures. Okay, I know I'm quite hypocritical, but highly suggest you take audit of where you really are in your academic journey. Then just be real to yourself lah. That's my take of the matter. What about you, Darrell? How about you? I'm pretty sure not everybody attends all their lectures in their lives lah, right?
If I'll be honest, I'm in the same situation as you lah. I'm a very efficient person. So for me, I decide my course of action based on what is more efficient. I agree with most points in terms of if you're still learning new content, you should attend it because there's no reason not to. Okay. My dilemma boils down more towards if the teacher's teaching style really does not suit you. Okay, should you still listen in or should you do your own self-study? For me, that boils down to what works for you. For example, let's say if you're learning electromagnetism, the teacher teach, you really don't understand anything. Okay, then maybe what you would like to do is that in conjunction to listening into your teacher, maybe you can at the same time refer to your own school notes or you can even refer to our free notes to see whether there's any way to reinforce the understanding. If you need to, go onto YouTube, maybe look for a tutorial video, maybe that will work too. But what you should be doing during that lesson time slot that's dedicated for electromagnetism is that you're doing your 100% to learn the chapter. So I'm not saying that you don't tune in to the lecture just because you want to do like another subject's homework, for example. That should not be the case, because that time slot is meant for you to be learning this content. The school designed the syllabus and the timetable in such a way whereby this is the time for you to learn. Okay, but how you learn it, do what's more efficient for you. If your teacher is really not the teaching style is really not for you, then don't force it. Okay, but you should be looking at other ways you can learn the chapter. Okay, be it making your own notes or whatsoever. So all I'm saying here is that if it's not productive, should you listen or to do your own revision? You can do your own revision if that's what helping you to learn, because the end goal is you need to learn the chapter. But I just want to put it out there that while sometimes you feel like your teacher might not be doing a good job and whatsoever, I feel like a lot of times it's also down to a bit of bias or like social pressure. Like you say, oh, teachers suck, teachers suck. Maybe the teacher is not the most popular teacher. The way they teach might be boring, but what they might be saying, okay, if you hear the way they are delivering the content, they're actually very accurate and they know exactly what they're teaching. So sometimes if you go beyond the presentation of information and you just listen into the actual content that they're trying to bring across, actually a lot of teachers, they have very, very good mastery of the subject. And you can trust that the teachers, they're actually in a very good position to be the bringer of knowledge just because of the years of experience they have. It's just that sometimes maybe they're a bit jaded. They keep teaching the same chapter for 10 years. They're also a bit sian, right? But that doesn't take away that the content they are teaching is accurate. And a lot of times for more complex concepts, be it electromagnetism, isomers in chemistry, or macromolecules, these are not concepts that you can grasp just by reading off the notes. Because, for example, electromagnetism, Fleming's left-hand rule, right, is 3D, right? Like, how are you going to visualize it for the first time if you have never seen somebody demonstrate it to you? So the value of having a teacher is like they are your guide, okay? But the moment you get the guidance from them and you're able to run on your own, go ahead and run, go and do practices and whatsoever to help reinforce your knowledge. But if you're at the stage whereby you still need hand-holding, then there's little reason for you not to listen. Especially in the case whereby you don't get it, your teacher you don't understand it, ask questions. So that's one way you can motivate yourself to be productive during the lesson itself. So I don't know how long home-based learning is here to stay. But all I can say is that don't let home-based learning be a barrier to you in terms of your progress towards your O-levels and A-levels. So to put things into context, right, O-levels is less than 5 to 6 months away. A-levels is probably 6 to 7, October, November period. You have literally like half a year left towards your end goal, your national exam itself. That's the exam whereby you really don't get a second chance. If you screw up your mid-years, you say, I got careless or whatever, like I'm not very good with this chapter yet. You cannot make the same excuse at your national exam. That's it, So you kind of have to put a bit of time frame and perspective in terms of when is it that you need to get serious. And this home-based learning, if it's here to stay, right, you really need to mental prep yourself to take on the responsibility and to be accountable to yourself in terms of the amount of work you put in and how you be as productive as you can. Don't give the excuse that say, oh, home-based learning, I'm not learning anything, I'm not productive. The only person you can be blaming should be yourself for not putting yourself in the position to succeed. So here, I think what we are outlining are tips and tricks that really work for us to make ourselves more productive, especially in a home-based learning setting. So the onus is on you now to carry out the actions and to follow through on your plan. Okay, Emmanuel, anything else you want to add before we wrap up this episode?
I think that you have covered most of the productivity tips already. I also just want to highlight the importance of staying safe. And I think just now, Darrell mentioned something about how you need to really make sure you are keeping yourself healthy during this period. Like one thing that always bothered me was how I used to fall sick closer to the exam period because of like the amount of hours I was putting in and the stress I was feeling. So I want you all to like mentally visualize. Imagine if you are overworking your body, right, to the point where you are falling sick. All of the effort is completely wasted. So I need you all to recall and remember that when you are prepping for your exams, a big portion of it comes in also making sure that you're in the best physical condition to take it. So make sure you're not depriving yourself of sleep. But that being said, also obviously push yourself towards working hard lah. But you need to strike that balance. So remember to keep yourself healthy, keep yourself safe, keep your family safe. try to avoid high risk situations where you are in like big parties and you're spreading the whatever germs or whatever bodily kind of potential bodily fluids that can get you sick with coronavirus. Avoid that, definitely. Make sure that you are also treating everybody nicely, right? Because now we are in a very, very troubling time, and just a little bit of kindness can go a long way. Yeah, I think other than that, we've more or less come to the end of this current podcast, and we hope to see you in the next one. Any concluding statements, Darrell?
Nope. I hope you all enjoyed the podcast. Do remember to follow us either on YouTube or on Spotify, and suggest to us what topics you want us to discuss next. And with that, that's the end of today's episode. Goodbye, everyone.
See you guys.
It sound right, boy.